So hi, today we're talking about the idea that men don't cry. Do you think that it's rare that men cry?
No. I think it's because men are human beings, so we all cry.
So why is it seen from many people that if a man cries, that he's not man enough?
Well, I think that expression is quite funny when you say not man enough because times have changed, and it can be contradictory because on one hand you can say if a man cries, then he is being too sensitive, but then if he doesn't cry, then he's not showing emotions. And it's the same thing for women. If they are wearing a business suit, for example, they may be seen to be too aggressive and thinking about their career. But if they dress girly, then they seem to not be taken seriously. So the idea that men don't cry and being linked to not being man enough, I think, I think that stereotype, that bias, I think it has been challenged, and I think it's continually challenged.
So I think some people think that, that a man has to be like a rock, like he has to be this pillar of strength. And that is why some people think that men aren't meant to cry. But yes, men are also human and they have human emotions. And crying isn't only for women or girls, it's for anybody that's a human.
Yeah, definitely. I think in today's day and age, there's more emphasis has been put on mental health. You see it in the media, you see celebrities talking about mental health and being advocates for mental health. So I think understanding your emotions, I think is really important. So if it's a man, if it's a woman that is crying and needs to cry, I think there's no shame in that.
So many men say that they want to cry, but they physically can't cry. What advice would you give to somebody who wants to release their emotions?
Maybe journaling, writing about what you are feeling, if it's happy, if it's sad. I read this study that the other day about human emotions, and I think there's over 20 emotions have been identified. So I think the more in touch you are with yourself, being comfortable in your skin, you would be okay with. Because I think when you're crying, I think it's a feeling of losing control. And in today's society, everything is about productivity, being in control, knowing how you're spending your time, trying to be very productive. So when you're crying, over something sad or difficult, you are out of control at that time. But, we are amazing. Human beings are amazing. The things that happen in our body are often there for a reason, to try to help us. So when your body's crying, maybe it's trying to, like you said, release some kind of energy to help you heal.
I mean, also when people are raising children, when they're raising boys, and they can often tell a boy that's crying, stop crying, boys don't cry. So these messages start from a really young age. As society, we tend to convey messages that, as a man, don't show emotion. And then we complain about men not showing emotion.
Yeah.
I mean, growing up as a boy, did you feel like you could express emotion or that you had to be a certain way?
I think at that time, it was seen to be weak to show emotion. Because if you think about like a professional job, for example, you have to act in a certain way, you have to portray confidence. So if you are seen to be crying, that's a sign of weakness.
Yes, I read somewhere that a man said that if his wife was on the phone with her employer and she was going through a stressful situation and she cried on the phone, that would be more acceptable. But if he had to cry on the phone to his employer, it wouldn't seem as acceptable. Don't you think that's unfair?
Definitely, it's unfair. I think, however evolved humans are, we still carry some of the past from us. If you think about how we had to live in a society that wasn't modern, so it was based off the men going out to hunt, and if they didn't find food, then everyone would starve, and the women would look after the children and cook. And over years, over hundreds and hundreds of years, that's evolved to the point where men and women are capable of doing both, but these stereotypes still exist and the biases are there.
And I think we're all guilty of buying into stereotypes. Because I remember once when I heard this man and he was crying so much. And I was quite confused. At first I didn't know why he was crying. But he was crying because somebody had broken up with him. And, he was like sobbing like how you would sob at a funeral. And prior to that, I had never heard a man cry over a breakup. And now looking back, it's like, yes, he was going through something which was terrible. So yes, he would be deeply affected by it. But at the time, it was because it was so rare for me to actually hear a man cry like that. I've often heard women cry. It's the norm to hear women cry, to express themselves. Even when they're joyous, they can cry tears of joy. So it's really the norm.
Yeah, I think even that to an extent can be based upon your own personal circumstance. So when you say that you've seen other women cry, is that within your family? Is that friends?
Yeah, both. Both. I mean, even at school, when people used to cry, it would be girls that were crying more than boys. And when you cry, it's really afterwards, you can often feel good, better than you did prior to crying. It's really like a release. So it must be difficult for a person to not feel like they can cry. And now as a 42-year-old man, how do you feel like going forward with if a young boy to come to you and he says, I've cried and I feel bad about crying. How would you advise him?
I would say, see it as a sign of strength. Knowing your emotions is a sign of strength. So when something is happening in your body, rather than ignoring it and trying to push it away, it will only resurface later. And that because you haven't dealt with your emotions. So I think it's a part of emotional intelligence. If you can identify, hey, I'm feeling this way, I'm upset about something, by acknowledging it, helps you to work through the problem and makes you stronger rather than making you weaker, because we wouldn't have this otherwise.
And some men say that they don't like to cry in front of their girlfriends or wives because they feel that their partners would then think of them as being weak. What would your advice be to them?
That's a tricky situation. I think everyone is different. I think every relationship, the dynamics is different. So at the end of the day, I think you just have to do what you feel is right. It can get very complicated. So even though your partner may say it's okay to cry, but once you do cry, they may think, this is a bit strange. You're not as strong as I thought you were. And they wouldn't acknowledge it, but they would be thinking about it. Because like I said, we have these biases and they're there for a reason, in terms of having security, in terms of having strength and stability and all of these things. Once you're crying, that means that you're showing some vulnerability, some weakness. So how are you able to do that? So I think at the end of the day, you know, people change over time. So even your partner may not really know themselves. They may say, it's okay. But once you do, then they may change their mind.
But then
So,
shouldn't you rather not be with that partner, that girlfriend or wife
yeah,
or partner?
definitely. Definitely. I think that's why I said, you know, it's important to know yourself first and then to deal with the repercussions later. So if you feel like not crying and hiding it down and you're able to get on with life and be productive, then I think that's fine. But if you feel that it's not helping me, you know, I'm going through a difficult time, and it may help you to move forward. So it's dependent on the individual.
Thank you very much for listening, and let us know your thoughts. What do you think about the statement of men don't cry? Many people do say that. Do you think that you are able to share your emotions if you're a guy and you're watching, or do you think it's difficult to share your emotions? And if you're a woman watching, what are your thoughts about the statement men don't cry? Thanks for watching. Comment below with your thoughts and see you next time. Bye.
Bye.